On October 13th, 1972, Flight 571, which was carrying 45 passengers and crew, including 19 members of the professional club rugby team, along with their families, supporters, and friends, crashed into the remote heart of the Andes, forcing survivors to become each other's best hope. And today I'll be sharing with you all my review of what I consider to be a must-watch movie in the Society of the Snow. What is going on, movie fans, and welcome back to my channel. Before we get into my thoughts of this film, I want to start the conversation in the comments below. Let me know, number one, if this film was on your radar, but also, were you familiar about this true story? And of course, once you've seen this film, what did you all think? Let me know in the comments below. So to answer my own question, I didn't know anything about this true story, and I didn't really know much about the movie besides getting like a screener for your consideration time of the year. So this was not on my radar. I wasn't familiar with the story. And with that being said, this not knowing much about the story created this experience in which when I was watching this film, I was in complete awe of what actually happened. Director J.A. Bayona is mostly known for being an excellent horror filmmaker, but I also consider him to be a great director who looks at the human condition and telling stories about survival. Perfect example of that is his 2012 film named The Impossible, which was fantastic, but he does such a great job of capturing those survival instinct moments with his characters and mixing in his great eye for horror and his touch on horror, which to me made him the perfect director to tell this story, in my opinion. So yes, his last movie, which was the Jurassic Park, I can't remember the subtitle, I wasn't a fan of that film, but I still believe and I still think now, especially after seeing this film, J.A. Bayona is a fantastic horror director, but just a great director in general, and he really puts his style and his sensibilities in these human stories into this film on full display. Like, he is great when it comes to directing this true story, which was absolutely devastating. But get into something that I was very shocked about. Now, after doing more research and learning more about the true story and then tying into this movie, I was shocked to find out that most of the actors in this film, this was their first big movie. And the reason I say I was shocked is because when you see this film, I was so convinced and they were so believable in their roles. Like, to me, this movie almost felt like I was watching a National Geographic film because it felt like it was like we're watching real people in a real circumstance of crashing into this cold, terrible condition area. Like, it felt like I was watching real people in a real life situation. And that's because their acting skills were so on point and their physical appearance and the physicality to their characters were just perfect in my eyes. And not to give too much away from the details, if you weren't familiar with the story like I was, this was one of the most coldest and worst conditions to be in snow. These characters were freezing without food, and the actors captured that with so much authenticity. Which brings me to the brutal nature of this story. The things they do to survive was definitely tough to watch, but you kind of understood their logic behind their decisions, but also there were some scenes that just truly got under my skin. And I'll just say this, when we actually see the plane crash sequence, it was just brutal, it was shocking, and it was just like, again, that was just one thing to survive that plane crash on top of adding on what they had to do to survive for almost, I think, 72 days. And again, I won't give too many details away, but this film was just, I was in awe of all of just the production, how they shot it. Like, again, it felt so real. Like, I didn't feel like I was watching a movie. That's how real it was to the circumstances. And just a few more points I want to mention before getting to my criticisms. I actually really enjoyed the story and the narrative and the time we got to spend with these characters who, for the most part, were religious, and we see them questioning their faith and being put to test their faith, and seeing how these characters refuse to do certain things was just so compelling to me. So I can just go on and on about this. The production, the way it was shot, the score in this film was just so fantastic. So, and the acting, directing, a lot of great things to be said about this film, but I do have some criticisms. I will mention, I did feel as though the film's runtime was mostly justified to really put you in the position of what these people went through every day and every night, and seeing how they were trying to make their way out and try to get help. But at some points, some moments felt a little bit too long. Like, we spent time in certain moments. Again, I love the conversations we had about, believing in God and why would we be put in this position, and, everything, the decision they went into, what they eat, how they ate it. Let's try to find this and that. Like, those moments really felt you know, important to the story, but there were just one or two moments where I'm like, this is feeling like we're spending too much time in this conversation or spending too much time doing this. And certain scenes, again, is meant to make you feel like you're there and you're experiencing all their decisions, but sometimes it felt a little bit repetitive as far as like a, you know, movie structure goes, right? It kind of felt repetitive at times. And also I want to mention, after we see the crash and follow the survivors, there isn't necessarily a true lead character or a main character that we follow through this narrative. Like sometimes I felt like I didn't know who certain characters were, like I couldn't remember their names, and some characters don't get as much screen time, so when something bad happens to them, you're just like, wait a minute, who were you again? And you know, it was hard to kind of follow along because this is an ensemble cast. Like again, there isn't necessarily a lead character, and when the film does put an actor in a lead position, you're like, okay, this is the character A who we're gonna kind of follow through from point A to point B, but then something would happen to them, and then we would have someone come else and be like, oh, well, okay, now we're following your perspective, but then no, something happened to them. So I say this now, I understand the creative decision to not necessarily make it a singular person story versus the group experience. But again, I think it just would have made it a little bit more cohesively, narratively speaking, a little bit more attached to a certain character from point A to how things wrap up. But again, I understand the perspective and the decision that they made to ultimately make it about the survivors versus, like I said, a singular story. So those are my main pros and my criticisms. So before I give you all my overall score and my final thoughts of this movie, I want to take the time to thank you for making it to this point in the video. I really appreciate you all. If you haven't already, consider hitting the like button, sharing your thoughts in the comments, but also sharing this video, and also consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, Society of the Snow is one of the best survival movies I've ever seen. The emotional impact of this incredible real-life survival story is incredible, as it takes you on a journey through the harshest conditions and the resilience of the human spirit. Their unimaginable struggle is captured in such an exceptional way through their performances, which featured an ensemble cast by mostly unknown actors. Director J.A. Bayona's work consistently aims to uncover humanity and adversity. Now, although the long runtime may be debatable, this experience is still captivating, and I will not be flying on a plane anytime soon. I'm going to give this movie a 4.5 out of 5. Again, y'all, this film is, I forgot to mention, it's on Netflix, by the way. I'm pre-recording this when I saw it. I believe it's going to be available on Netflix on January 4th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll leave that on the screen now, but it's emotionally earned too. Like, even though you don't have, like I said, necessarily a main character you follow through, you like care for all the characters for the most part, especially the ones that get the most screen time. But it's emotional, it's devastating, it's shocking, it is hard to watch, but it is a must-watch movie in my opinion. Like, I highly recommend you all give it a watch, and when you do, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What worked, what didn't work, how did you feel while experiencing this? Were you, again, familiar with the story? If you were, like, do you think they captured the essence of the story and really brought that story justice? Or like me, this is your first time hearing about it, and if so, what was your overall experience? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. You all are awesome. Appreciate you all watching today's review. If you enjoyed yourself and this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my top 10 list for the end of the year and most anticipated films of the new year. Check out my most recent video, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.